All right, welcome everybody to our interview series with the experts. I am so happy to be here today with Austin and Zamhariri. Zamhariri. I knew I was going to mess that up. Austin, who is the executive director with Texas Cannabis Collective, and he's going to give us some information about what's going on as far as marijuana reform here in Texas, and just general information that we want to know and ways that you can get active as far as in this particular process. So, Austin, first of all, I just want to say you are a dedicated activist for cannabis reform. You've been doing it for quite some time. I met you back in 2018, I believe. 2017 or 2018.
Yeah, so long ago. Anything before COVID, it's hard to remember.
Right. We all have the COVID brain now. But so let's just get to it. Why weed? Why is this the fight that you're fighting?
So, I have a very strong relationship with the cannabis plant. Obviously, I grew up in the DARE program. Drugs bad. This is your brain on drugs. Gateway. This is going to make you want to do crack, cocaine, meth, heroin, these kinds of things. I was in high school, obviously, and so turned the century, 2001, entered college, smoked my first joint, and realized, wow, this is not what they said it was. This is nothing like they said it was. And began to do my research and really begin to get very familiar with the cannabis plant. Fast forward 10 years, I get arrested for Class B misdemeanor marijuana possession under 2 ounces. Really, it was less than a gram of marijuana that I was arrested for. So I got to go through the criminal justice system. In 2010, I was arrested in Grapevine, Texas. Spent a night in Grapevine jail and subsequently 5 days in Tim Curry Correctional in downtown for less than a gram of what would today probably be considered CBD flower, because it was like so low THC. It wasn't even I didn't even get arrested for good weed. I got arrested for, like something really bad. But I digress. I got to spend a lot of time dealing with the criminal justice system regarding cannabis. And then not even 2 years later, marijuana was legalized recreationally for the first time in 2 states, Colorado and Washington. And so in 2014, I went to Colorado to kind of experience what legal recreational marijuana was like. Coming from Texas is kind of a shock. And I absolutely fell in love with it. Absolutely. I thought it was just amazing. This was incredible. It was like, this is what I want to do. I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and realized, this is what I want to do with my life. If I could just sell cannabis all day, I've got a lot of experience. We've done a lot of research. This is something I could do. So how hard could it be to legalize marijuana in Texas, right? Yeah, here we are.
Right? Here we are, still doing this.
So yeah, that's kind of how the idea of the collective was formed. That's how I wanted to jump into it. I got back and started getting involved locally and getting involved in not only local politics but state politics. I began to learn a lot about the Texas legislature, because that's where we have to really reform our drug laws. And so that's kind of how the collective was born.
That's how the collective. Okay, so let's talk about the collective. What's the mission? When was it started? I mean, was it started back when I had met you, or was that later?
So loosely, yes. I had created, when I come back in 2016, I realized, I got to get all in. So I created just what was a Facebook page to keep Texans updated with what was happening in Texas cannabis, and kind of my adventures of trying to reform these laws so we could have an industry and we could move forward past this period of prohibition. These were my dreams, obviously almost 10 years ago. Clearly still living them, but it was really just kind of a social media page, and I've got a lot of expertise in social media dynamics and growth, and so I was able to turn this page into a few hundred followers of just family and friends, into a few thousand, then it become tens of thousands, and then we launched an Instagram page which has tens of thousands, and
Oh,
working on a Twitter X page that has several thousand. And so just all of these social media platforms that we were able to build this network in was just gaining so much traction. So, I had originally planned on it, it really started as kind of like a news media thing. Obviously, it was tracking a lot of my advocacy work that I was doing personally, and my team that I had started to build.
mhm.
But then came COVID. Obviously, that gave a pause on everything, and a lot of reflection for a lot of Americans. And so we realized, oh, no, 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 we need to turn this into a nonprofit organization and really work on doing things differently, and getting like into the grassroots arena. And so we got incorporated as a nonprofit, as a 501c4 in 2021. So now we're 4 years legit, and then just hit the ground running. Since then, we helped decriminalize marijuana in 8 of the 9 different cities that have voted through their home rule ballot initiative. We've done a ton of work at the legislature. We've raised a ton of money for cancer. We've done a lot of things, and so just very proud to like take an idea and manifest it into something that is making like true cultural historic impact in our state.
Okay. Yeah, you've done a lot in a short period of time, but you do get pushback. Can we talk about when you decriminalizing it in a number of counties? I think you said 8 counties. Do you get pushback at the state level, say from Ken Paxton, Dan Patrick type, that want to kind of roll back what you've done with regard to decriminalization?
Yeah, I would say it even starts even more at the local level, because some of the cities that we decriminalized in, so there's 9 cities. All right, let me give you the rundown. That's the city of Austin was in 2021, and then in 2022 it was Denton, San Marcos, Killeen, Elgin, and Harker Heights. We did have a failed initiative that happened in 2024 with Lubbock. Unfortunately, that was the belly of the beast. The very, very progressive measure that obviously didn't pass. But then later that year, we also we added Lockhart, Bastrop, in the big shebang city of Dallas.
Yeah.
So we have 9 cities that have used home rule ballot initiative to effectively decriminalize up to 4 ounces of marijuana. No arrest, no citation. Cops can't use smell as probable cause. The city can't even use any money to allocate for testing to see if it's a legal hemp compliant product or marijuana, right? So we have what I would call absolute decriminalization in some of these cities, and the results have been mixed post passage of ordinance. For instance, the city of Denton, my hometown, decided that this would violate state law, and that they did not want to prohibit their officers from executing their sworn duty under state law. And so while the initiative was voted in by the people overwhelmingly, over 70%, it was simply something that was on the books and that would not be funded by the city of Denton. Right. However, places like Killeen, Austin, city of Dallas, these cities, San Marcos, these cities have implemented their ordinances.
Okay.
And because of that, obviously the conundrum is, oh, well, this must violate state law, right? And this is where you've seen Attorney General Ken Paxton jump in and file lawsuits to try to usurp the will of the voter locally, which is how the state of Texas, a lot of people don't really understand the dynamics of the politics in the state of Texas. Our state government is very decentralized, right? So like the vested power of enforcement across all laws really comes at the county level. Your local DA is probably the most powerful person in your local community. And so they really are the ones who are allowed a lot of jurisdiction, a lot of leeway in interpreting the law and executing the law according to how it fits best for that particular county. And this goes all the way back to the inception of the Republic of Texas, right? So like anybody that says any differently really doesn't understand the dynamics of the state of Texas. And so because of that, the Attorney General, we see a lot of what is in the current power structure wanting to centralize power from the state level. And that is just not how the state dynamics were enveloped and developed throughout our history. So the Attorney General has tried to sue Killeen, Elgin, Harker Heights, Denton, the city of Dallas, the city of Austin, and the city of San Marcos. And let me just give you these results real quick. Attorney General Ken Paxton has lost in Travis County, trying to sue on the merits that the proposition in Austin decriminalizing marijuana violates state law. He has also lost in Hayes County on San Marcos. He has had to pause in Bell County on Killeen, and most recently he has lost an injunction in the city of Dallas. So the Attorney General is doing nothing but wasting taxpayer dollars fighting local ballot initiatives that were overwhelmingly voted in favor of by the public. So if we're talking about doging things, these are the kinds of things that we need to be doging.
Right. Yes. Frivolous lawsuits. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I wholeheartly agree with that, Austin. Doge. Yeah. Yeah. He's got a long list of things that we could doge him for. So Texas is lagging behind other states as far as medical marijuana. So what's holding us back, and what would a smarter approach be like?
I would say the legislature, the state legislature, the executives, they're all holding us back. The lieutenant governor, I would say, perhaps being the most responsible. Really, this is a doctor-patient issue. I work for one of the largest providers of medical marijuana prescriptions here in the state of Texas, Thrive Apothecary, shout out. And we, the system it just needs radical expansion. We have probably the most progressive medical marijuana program in the entire country, just north of the Red River in Oklahoma. You just like say you got a hangnail and they'll write you a medical marijuana recommendation to get into their program, right? So it's not, it's pretty straightforward and very easy access, and just a lot of variety and consumption methods in Oklahoma. Texas, on the flip side, is the most restrictive program in the country. In Oklahoma, there's thousands of medical, providers. Yeah. In Texas, there are three. It is not business friendly. It is run by DPS, which is Department of Public Safety. Why a law enforcement agency is running a medical marijuana program, I have no idea. This is only something that Texas legislators could think of. And it is just, our medical marijuana program has actually, people are shocked by this, has actually been in effect since 2015. So we're coming up 10 years on the anniversary of passage of Senate Bill 339, which was the Texas Compassionate Use Act, right? So between 2015, 2025, we have 60,000 patients out of 30 million plus in the state of Texas. And to be honest with you, Of those 60,000 patients, only about maybe less than 10,000 are active registered patients who are actually actively pursuing their product through the program. Most of them are getting into the program, sustaining the script, and supplementing through the cheaper, viable option of the hemp market that exists here in Texas. So the medical marijuana program in Texas is absolutely failing, and that's not my words. That is in the words of the DPS under their own consultation of evaluating compassionate use. Weeds Inc. or Weeds LLC, they're the entity that they reached out to do consulting, wrote a 70-page document that shows where we're at, the current status of the compassionate use program. And I mean, for lack of a better word, it's a pretty damning document, I'm sorry, that really says that compassionate use in Texas has failed to be able to, at least in taking care of all of the state of Texas. And so, you know, Texas has a long way to go on the medical side, and this directly comes to the state legislature, who refuses to really radically expand the program, as well as the executives, and that would include Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. I mean, the idea that SB3 was so high up as far as a priority of everything that we have going on. I have a question, though. It just made me think about it when you were talking about Oklahoma. How much money do you think, Texans' money, do you think is going to Oklahoma, where people go there maybe and get medical marijuana?
Well, so I really can't give a definitive answer on Oklahoma, and I think there's a better example.
Okay.
The better example is New Mexico. New Mexico has recreational marijuana, and we have a very long border with New Mexico, including very major cities that are within an hour drive or so of the border, specifically El Paso, where it's literally you walk across the street and you're in New Mexico.
Right.
And so what we're seeing there is that 60% of the New Mexico recreational marijuana market is coming from Texans. And 60%? This includes, yes, 60%. Yes. And they are doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue every year. When you look at, and what's great about New Mexico is New Mexico has a very public, they do a lot of public numbers. So you can really see what cities are doing what businesses are doing what within the cities. So obviously Albuquerque is the biggest city in New Mexico. It tends to generate the most sales. However, if you look at a lot of the other big selling cities in the state of New Mexico, it's Sunland Park, which is right outside the border of El Paso. It is a community of 20,000 people, and yet some months it's doing number 2 in sales and revenue in the state of New Mexico. You have a place
traveling to get, yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, I have many friends that work in Sunland Park. They all live in El Paso. They will tell you that Texans are overwhelmingly, like, you go into these dispensary parking lots and you just look, it's Texas plates everywhere. Like, El Paso is a really big city compared, in that region.
Yeah.
And so, they're getting a lot of sales from Texas. That is not the only area, though. We have places like Hobbs, Clovis, Clayton, some of these more rural East New Mexico cities that literally sit right on the border of Texas. And what I often hear is that it's progressives that are progressive liberals that are funding the New Mexico marijuana market. And I'm just like, you have to be just absolutely oblivious and ignorant to think that it's just West El Paso that is fueling the New Mexico market because, while El Paso might be a progressive city, I can guarantee you Lubbock and Amarillo and pretty much everything up the panhandle is very conservative. And so
Right.
you have millions of conservatives that are living in these rural West Texas counties that are driving less than an hour into New Mexico and fueling these markets. And so
Yeah.
these trends that you see in places like Sunderland Park and Chaparral and Hobbs towards the southern part of New Mexico, you see them trending all the way up the border, all the way to the northern tip.
Mhm.
And so uh, technically, I mean, literally giving hundreds of millions of dollars to the state of New Mexico when that money could easily be coming right into the state of Texas.
Yeah, we're just throwing money away. That's basically it. Yeah, I wanted to touch on when they said this is mainly a progressive liberal thing. However, I've spoken with a number of conservatives, and it's a personal freedom thing. So it's not, it's not a matter of left versus right. It's a matter of personal freedoms, the way I understand it.
Look, let's be real. Progressives and conservatives do not get along on many issues. All right. It's not a lot of commonality there.
Yeah.
But this is one of the most I would say the biggest issue in America where you see common neutral ground between uh, even the most progressive of progressives and the most conservative conservatives. There is just wild desire to have access to the cannabis plant.
Mhm.
And it really does fit along conservative beliefs, limited government,
Right.
freedom of choice, and all of these things. And it's funny because, obviously they love, the conservatives love guns, right? And they talk about all of these things with guns, but then the minute you put the marijuana argument or the cannabis argument in there in place of guns, it's kind of like, whoa, I don't know about all that. But
At least publicly.
that's from a leadership standpoint. I
Mhm.
would say the overwhelming majority of conservatives wildly support this issue, and this is actually evident when we go back to the decriminalization campaigns.
Yeah.
You don't get numbers like 71%, 67% in the city of Dallas, 85% in the city of Austin, 80% in the city of San Marcos, 71% in the city of Denton. Like, you don't get these kind of numbers without wild supermajority support, right? Progressive and conservative. And so we know we actually have tangible evidence outside of polling. The polling already tells us that, for almost a decade plus, that um, the Texans are overwhelmingly ready to decriminalize, open up medical access, and allow recreational adult use markets.
Mhm.
But now we actually have real tangible votes that show that Texans are ready for, like, when I say radical, I mean like very radical transition from prohibition into uh, regulated retail markets.
Yeah. It just seems so simple. So let's go ahead and talk money. The economic impact of cannabis reform or lack of it in Texas. And you pointed this out. Texans want this, but who wins and who loses if this doesn't happen or if it does happen? Under the current restrictions, who wins and who loses?
Okay, so I want to make sure that I refine this point. Are we talking about the hemp market that exists currently in Texas? Or are we
Um,
talking
this is
about the medical?
cannabis reform right now, but yeah, we'll definitely get to the issues with the hemp market and SB3. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you this. Let's just jump into SB3 because
Okay.
that is what's dominating the state right now.
Okay.
It's when the state legalized hemp in 2019, they de facto legalized recreational marijuana and didn't really realize it.
Yeah.
And so because of that, you have what is one of the biggest hemp-derived cannabis markets in the entire country. And I can give you 2022 numbers that were put together by Whitney Economics. It was funded by Hometown Hero. And those numbers tell us that we are doing, as an industry in Texas, $8 billion in revenue, over $1 billion in sales tax, and we're hiring 55,000 people as an industry.
Wow.
So let's just assume that growth has continued to rise over the last 3 years. So we're 3 years removed from that data.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just, think forward and understand that those numbers are probably now not 8 billion, but probably between 15 and 20 billion in revenue. We're probably doing between $3 and $4 billion in sales tax, and we're probably hiring between 75 and 100,000 people here in the state of Texas.
Wow.
And it is providing a lot of relief to a lot of people that are not getting that relief through the very, very limited scope of compassionate use. However, at the same time, because of the rules that were brought forth in 2019, it is a completely, I don't want to say completely unregulated, because it is regulated, but it is wildly underfunded in helping the regulations, right? So we're regulated under both Department of Ag and Department of State Health Services. DSHS is the shorter term that we use, right? So we have 7 DSHS inspectors for over 8,000 businesses in the state of Texas. So you can imagine that they obviously cannot. They've even testified in interim hearing back in 2024 that they can get to every single business in the state of Texas once every 3 years, 4 years maybe.
Yeah.
This is not proper regulation. This
Right.
is very lazy on the state of Texas, which is why I believe you've seen the complete just swinging in the other direction by the lieutenant governor in issuing Senate Bill 3, which is a total hemp THC ban. It's not even a total hemp THC ban. It is a total hemp cannabinoid ban in the state of Texas, and will effectively shut down the entire hemp program, with the collateral consequences of shutting down even industrial production.
Should it pass?
Should it pass? Yes. It's going to pass the Senate probably next week. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I testified in the bill not this past Monday, but the Monday before, in the State Affairs Committee, and it had overwhelming majority support for being against the bill. However, we all know the dynamics of the state. If the lieutenant governor has a high priority bill, those high priority bills tend to pass along party lines. And so, that being said, and this is where I think is very important that we understand that we need to not take our progressive members and our Democrat members for granted, because we also had a Democrat member vote in favor of the bill moving past committee, which is Senator Zamhariri. So it is very important that while we continue to work on our conservative members on this issue, that we don't forget about our progressive members, because we certainly have several progressive members that aren't all fully on board. And I think that's kind of the myth, is that, this is a progressive issue, and so all progressives are on board. No, that is absolutely not true. We need to continue to be working with all members of the ledge and educating them on the pros, the cons, the unintended consequences, the positives, the negatives, the impacts, all of those kinds of things. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, and it's causing a lot of chaos in the state, because there's a lot of money that's involved in it right now, and nobody really knows what's going to happen.
And these like you said, should it pass? And that was not good news. They gave me there, but should it pass? So this is a lot of businesses shutting down, most likely, including probably yours.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, nobody. Well, and here's the thing: the way they have the bill written, you have to test to the like 10,000th decimal point of refining pure CBD or CBG. These two chemical compounds out of 120 plus that they're trying to isolate. And just the whole infrastructure of what is entailed in the bill is so ridiculous. There is no establishment, zero. There is zero establishment in the state of Texas that will be able to stay open selling just those kinds of products. Not only that, we don't even have the technology to refine CBD or CBG to that level of purity without having some kind of content of other cannabinoid. It just does not exist. We can get it down to the 100th decimal point, right? So like 2 decimal points, not 5. And this was testified on by a chemist that I actually sat on the panel with. So these guys don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. They're just trying to shut the entire thing down because of the unintended consequences that they didn't realize they were passing in 2019. So, like, the ignorance is being followed by ignorance.
Right.
They're not listening to the specialists and the patients and the people that are telling them the reality on the ground. It's just it's infuriating. And
Yeah. So when it gets to the House, what are we looking at?
do what now?
It's going to get to the House. So it's going to pass the Senate. It's going to get to the House.
Let's assume that. Let's assume that it goes, let's just say it even goes along party lines, right? So it's probably going to pass 2012 or 1913 or something like that. It's going to go to the House. And in fact, we have been working, I've been to the legislature now 7 times. This is my 7th. This past week was my 7th time being at the legislature's opening day of session, and we have not paid one. We spent a little, I would say, maybe 5% of our time we've spent in the Senate working on Senate members. We already knew this Senate Bill 3 was always predetermined that it was going to pass through the Senate. The fact that it's even taking this long is a little bit surprising. And I think is something very positive for us. But we're still only midway through the session, so the fact that it's moving, we still have a lot of work to do. So let's just assume it passes along party lines. It's going to get to the House. There is not a lot of popularity in the House. In fact,
for SB3, there's not a lot of popularity. Okay.
No, there's not. There's a lot of dynamics in the House too that are maybe troublesome for a pathway to victory through the House, right? So, for instance, we were there on Monday and Tuesday. This is the same time that HB3 is being heard in House committee. HB3 being the voucher bill in the House. We know this is deeply unpopular among most Texans. And that this was almost a 24-hour hearing that they had. Not only is the voucher bill being widely debated in the House, we are starting to see aggressive movement by the pro-gambling lobby that is starting to attack House members, and I mean very conservative House members.
Because of who, the Wynn family.
So it would be Miriam Adelson, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
And Vegas Sands.
Sands. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Sands. Okay, yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Sheldon Adelson.
Yes. And Miriam Adelson, which you may know as being the #1 donor to President Donald Trump's campaign. So we have a very interesting dynamic on the gambling side, where they are using the Dallas Mavericks as leverage to facilitate expansion of gambling in the state of Texas so that Vegas Sands can have dominant market share. And this is being facilitated by the Adelson family. Now, this is kind of general speculation, but like, I mean, it's pretty, you read between the lines and you can kind of see what's going on, and you see what other legislators, especially the conservative ones, who feel like they are being attacked on this, what they're saying. So, between the gambling lobby, the voucher fight, you can see how a path to victory for SB3 is already going to be a very difficult hill to climb on the House side. And not just that, we have the dynamic of Speaker of the House, who is Dustin Burrows.
Right.
And Dustin Burrows was elected Speaker of the House via Democrat vote, right? So we had progressives who voted for Dustin Burrows. And this has caused a mighty rift in the conservative side. And so between all of these dynamics, the path to victory, outside of the general disdain for this bill still only has 2 co-authors. All right. If you look at most of the Senate priority legislation, most of these bills have dozens of co-authors, dozens of co-sponsors. And this bill is just, nobody wants to put their name on this legislation. And especially in the House, that we have several members who, they have their constituency is reaping a lot of benefit from this industry. And so we feel like we have a very strong advantage. The House, they get to vote on their leader. The Senate, not so much. We know how the Senate is run. So we're really very positive in welcoming of Senate Bill 3. It doesn't come without challenges. We are anticipating perhaps a companion bill to emerge from the House that may be more palatable with regulation as opposed to a complete total ban. However, there's still a lot of unknowns and mysteries as we move forward.
So you don't know what that companion bill is going to look like yet?
Not yet. In fact, Representative Shaheen, here out of North Texas, he has filed a bill, HB 2155, that is a total ban on hemp products in Texas. So it is very similar to SB3, but it is not a companion bill. It's actually its own. So if Senate Bill 3 comes over to the House side and there's no House companion bill, then, well, Senate Bill 3 will likely get debated and voted on, but have to go to conference because the House will almost assuredly amend the bill. So, we're not even there yet. We still need to go through the Senate floor, and I imagine it's even going to get mucked up there by some of our progressive senators, and we'll see what that looks like.
Yeah.
It's still too early in the session. I'm sorry. I don't have all the answers yet.
No. That's the problem, though. We don't know. And like you said, you were kind of surprised that it didn't pass faster than it seems to be. Yeah. So that's good.
I can tell you this. The Lieutenant Governor, Senator Charles Perry, State Affairs Committee, the Senate of Texas was not prepared for this battle. They were not prepared for this resistance. They were not ready for the hundreds of business owners that were going to show up in resistance to that testimony. They were not prepared for our lobby day. They think that they live in another world than we do. I mean, I hate to say that because obviously it's true, but like they just literally, they are a decade behind where the public is, and that this is evident in polling. It's evident in the voting. It's evident in the news media. It's evident on social media. Like I don't. There's no other way to like really break it down. Like the citizens of Texas are overwhelmingly ready for like whole legal cannabis access with home grow and radical medical marijuana expansions and full decriminalization with retroactive expungements of records. And like, I mean, we're ready to move past 100 years of marijuana prohibition in Texas. Over 100 years. We're talking 110 years since 1915 when it was first made illegal in El Paso, Texas. So Texans are ready. the
Yeah.
state legislature, in the executive leadership of Texas, they are still very much not ready.
Yeah, I just don't understand how this fight benefits them in any way. I'm not understanding why. It's
I can probably give you like 2 West Texas billionaire reasons why they
Oh,
probably don't want it to go down, but
okay. So
I don't like
okay.
to speculate on that.
So that's one of their agenda items that they would like. Okay, all right.
If
So
they don't
Wilson
have their hand
Dunn
in the
are
money, you know what I'm saying? If they don't have their hand in the money, then like they
Mhm.
probably don't want it.
Right. And you have to vote like them. Like you have to vote with what they want, lock, stock, and barrel. So yeah, you can't deviate. So maybe that okay. All right. Wilson Dunn would be a real good thing.
I
All
didn't
right.
mention which billionaires, by the way. I'm just saying.
Oh, did I do that? I'm sorry. Oh, all right. So, where does Texas fit then in that bigger picture of full-on legalization? Do we just have to wait for it to pass at a national level? Or do you think that there is still hope that cannabis reform can happen here in Texas without it happening at the national level?
The answer is yes and yes, right? So right now we're currently under 2 different timelines. We're waiting for a new farm bill, federal farm bill that was established in 2018. That is what currently dictates the regulations for hemp in the country under USDA. That was supposed to have passed every 5 years, right? So back even in 2023. So we haven't even had a new farm bill established, and we're still waiting on that. As far
Okay.
as I'm being told from a lot of my sources in DC, is that may not even happen until 2026.
Okay.
So the
There we are.
other issue at hand is that we are still awaiting the descheduling, or I'm sorry, the rescheduling that was initiated by President Biden, who authorized DOJ to initiate a rescheduling inquiry, and this led for HHS to issue a Schedule 3 recommendation to the DEA. This all happened under the last regime, right? So
Can you detail before you go on rescheduling of the? Can you detail for some of our listeners who might not know what you mean?
right. So currently, since the inception of the Controlled Substances Act under President Nixon in 1970,
Mhm.
marijuana has been scheduled as a Schedule 1 narcotic that has no known medical use, even under a doctor's supervision, and has a high rate of abuse, which I think most objective Americans will argue that is one of the greatest lies ever told in American history,
Mhm.
in that we've wasted trillions of dollars on enforcing a war against the plant. And 50 years later, 55 years later, the plant is winning. So that is Schedule 1. It's put there with the likes of heroin is one, PCP, just like recreational drugs, meth. I think this is a lie. It shouldn't take this long to get it done, but this is where we're at. And HHS has made that final recommendation that, oh yes, it does have therapeutic purposes under Schedule 3. And so this was issued back late last year, or September, I believe it's September, October of last year. And so we've just been waiting on DEA to finally do the rescheduling process, but they've been caught up in a lot of legal issues and really just dragging their feet. They really don't want this to happen.
They don't
Uh,
want it to be rescheduled.
They don't want it to be rescheduled, correct. And now under the new regime, we are also hearing that this may be something that gets kicked to 2026 as well. It gets kind of put on the back burners. So
To
right
wait.
now, from a federal standpoint, we're still in this weird limbo between the federal farm bill and federal rescheduling of marijuana. At the same time, let's just assume that those issues had been taken care of at the federal level.
Mhm.
We're still going to have to work on the state of Texas, right? Like the state of Texas is still going to have to opt in on this.
Mhm.
And so, we believe that we can still absolutely, and that's what's so great is that like it feels like on other issues the state of Texas isn't afraid to like defy federal law. And
Yeah, that's true.
in fact, our Compassionate Use Act is in violation of federal law. So like, what are we doing? The state of Texas should be we absolutely have the capability to be a global player on infrastructure, distribution, manufacturing, import, export, in the entire world. And we are absolutely leaving billions upon billions of dollars on the table for other entities. This includes other states and other countries to take advantage of. And we're it really is still a waiting game.
Mhm.
But right now, I think the fact that we are facing this total ban, it's putting us 10 steps backwards when we had taken several steps forward.
Yeah.
So time will tell. We will find out here in the next few months exactly how
Yeah.
this will play out.
And just the idea, it's hard to believe because here we are. I think we are the number 8 economy in the world, and we are supposed to be Texas. We're supposed to be good for business, and yet here we are just waste.
We are good for business. We are proving that for
Yeah.
cannabis products. We are 100% proving that.
Mhm.
We have one of the strongest hemp-derived cannabinoid markets in the entire country. They
Yeah.
literally want to take $20 billion and flush it into the Gulf of America.
You'll call it Gulf of America for that, okay? So,
See what I did there? See what I did
I
there?
did. I see what you did. Oh goodness. All right, so let's talk about, look, people want to support cannabis reform, and how do they do it? How do they plug in and become activists for this cause?
Okay, couple things. First and foremost, you need to follow us. We're at txcannaco.com, txcannaco.com. All right, you'll find a lot of links to our stuff, where to donate, all of that kind of stuff. You can be following us on social media, primarily on Instagram or Twitter X.
Okay.
We're at TX Canaco on Twitter X. We're on at TX Cannabis Collective at Instagram. We're on Facebook too. It's technically where we have our biggest following, but like with the least engagement. So you can find us there too. But definitely follow along there, because that's where we have one of the largest social media accounts regarding Texas cannabis uh, on social media. And so that's where you'll find a lot of our updates and things that we're doing. You can also, I would also highly recommend looking at other organizations like the Texas Hemp Business Council. They're doing some very wonderful work in leading the charge against the D8 ban here in Texas, which is headed to the Texas Supreme Court. They've also been wonderful leaders in fighting SB3. A big shout out to the team there, the executive team, Andrea, Mark, Cynthia, all of the wonderful leaders at the Texas Hemp Business Council. There's the Texas Hemp Coalition. So many wonderful leaders. My friend Eddie Velez out of Dallas, Oak Cliff Cultivators is president. He just testified the other day in Ag Committee while we were there for our lobby day. And so they're doing some wonderful work. So I encourage you to go look at what they're doing. You can go to their, TexasHempCoalition.com, I believe is there. their website, Texas Cannabis Policy, led by Heather Fazio. You can find her on Instagram at TX MJ Policy. There's so many just different wonderful organizations that are really starting to coalesce. One of the big reasons why we founded the collective is because we saw that as the burgeoning hemp industry came about, while there was enthusiasm for the market and industrial side, there was a lack of advocacy work. And so while you started to see a lot of other, high profile advocacy groups that used to lead this reform movement kind of maybe just fall off or disband, we wanted to make sure that we held a voice for Texans. And so that is a big part of why the collective kind of jumped on board. We're an all volunteer organization. Nobody here is a paid lobbyist. We don't we don't operate with a lot of capital. We operate off of influence, and we have that influence because we've been doing this work for 10 plus years. I've got a lot of relationships with local city council members, with state legislators, representatives, and senators, with industry professionals, executives, and other members across our community throughout the country. And so I would just advise people, hey, look, definitely follow us, but we're not the only ones doing something, right? If you follow us, you'll realize very quickly that there are a lot of other players in the game, and I encourage you to follow those other players as well.
And it sounds like you're all working in collaboration, which is great.
So yes and no. So
Okay.
really, when our focus at the legislature is really focused and geared around penalty reduction, right? So like, we don't want to see people going into jail anymore for low-level marijuana possession or marijuana possession in general. And
Correct.
so that is our goal. And so you have these hemp groups that are obviously focused on preserving the industry, and so there is this just kind of like general collaboration because the battle against SB3 really involves all of us. We could lose the industry. We're going to start making criminals out of everybody. There's just, all of us are vested in this because all of our agendas intersect here. And it is futile working alone, trying to be some like Superman by yourself. We need to find common ground. We need to continue to have conversations, and we have been doing that. Those who are serious, those in leadership who are serious about fighting SB3 and maintaining a solid regulatory process for compliant hemp product in the state. We're all kind of in tune, and even though we're doing kind of our own thing and arguing on different points, we're all having the conversation together in leading to make sure that we advance this cause and preserve these billions of dollars that are coming into our state.
I like what you're doing with regard to cannabis reform. It's been remarkable work, and I'm glad you are not going to be giving up on this and you're keeping up the fight, because it is something we're fighting. Just thinking about the possibility of like what you went through being arrested, and to be back to that point if SB3 passes, that will be the experience of so many low-level drug offenders. Would be low-level drug offenders. So yes, so keep fighting, Austin, and we want to keep supporting you, folks. Please, this work does not it's not cheap. So please follow Texas Cannabis Collective, but also donate to the cause. That is really going to help Austin and his cohorts work. So, all right.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Austin. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We can't wait to share this.
Awesome. I hope it was informative.
It really was. It really was. I think our listeners are going to be enlightened on a few things, so that's good. And maybe join that fight.